Recording.
Okay, great. It's official. It's starting. The kickoff event for Marine Debris 2025. We have a couple great guest presenters tonight. We're going to start with Riley Kaczynski. He was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and has been working in the solid waste and recycling field since 2007. Riley has traveled extensively throughout Alaska, working directly with rural communities and assisting them with preparing and backhauling hard-to-manage materials. As the Waste Logistics and Training Development Specialist for Zender, Riley continues to provide rural Alaskan communities with training and technical assistance through the Backhaul Alaska program. And Riley, you're also a board member with Haines Friends of Recycling, right? All right, well, great. Well, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, yeah, my name is Riley. I work for Zender, live here in Haines. Just gonna give a bit of an overview of this cool project that hasn't started quite yet, at least not the actual hands-on portion, but it'll be happening out in Western Alaska. It's the Murbach Marine Debris Project. And it's a good team that's helping out with this. My organization, Zender Environmental, is the lead applicant on the funding grant. But we also are partnering with Queric Inc., and we'll see a little bit more about them later, but they're gonna be spearheading the cleanups up in the Bering Strait region. Another project partner is Ocean Conservancy, so thank you, Christina. They are the subject matter experts that we are really leaning heavily on to make sure we're doing things right and try to get as much material as possible. And then Noah, Peter Murphy, has been helping us out with the NEPA review process, which I saw an email just the other day, and it sounds like we're very close to the finish line of getting all that approved so we can actually do the work this summer. So good group of folks. But I'm just gonna quickly give a little bit of background information on Zender, the Backhaul Alaska program, and some of these partners. So Backhaul Alaska, it's not an official entity, but Zender administers the program with the idea that we're going to try to help really any community haul out materials that they don't want going in their landfill. And from the map, you can see a lot of the focus is out in Western Alaska. We do a lot of things along the road system, but a lot of the heavy emphasis is out west. And why that is things are just a lot more tougher out there. Logistics are a lot more challenging, just everything. And in Western Alaska, and actually throughout Alaska, folks are operating Class 3 landfills. And Alaska is the only state in the nation allowed to have Class 3 landfills. There's an EPA exemption allowing small communities to effectively have landfills that are unlined, minimal mitigation, and use burning as a common volume reduction practice. And it's fine because that's what makes things work out in rural Alaska, but it also limits what you should be putting into your landfill. So that leaves us with a lot of materials like we'll see in a sec that aren't meant for online landfills, aren't meant to be burnt. Things like the scrap electronics, lead acid batteries, mercury bearing lamps. Those are the target materials for our program. And beyond that, there's lots of household hazardous waste, the oils, the glycols, the fuels, things like that also need to be properly managed. Our program, our budget is pretty limited. We can do around $250,000 a year spread out statewide. So we tackle some of these items that are a little quote unquote easier to manage, cheaper to manage is really what I mean. In order to just to get the communities involved in diverting materials from the landfill, getting it shipped out and properly managed. And hopefully, the ultimate goal is to get some more sustainable funding where we can tackle the nastier stuff. Again, the oils, glycol, fuel, other chemicals, but not there yet. So our target materials, again, the e-waste, batteries, lamps. When we met Nicole with Net Your Problem, we started getting into fish nets. So that's one of our target materials now. And with things catching on fire and the more widespread use of rechargeable lithiums and the lithium primary batteries, those are another target material of ours. And very, very, very recently, marine debris has become one. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with the whole marine debris world. Learned quite a bit over the last couple of years. I like it a lot, but we're actually going to be doing it for our first time, this coming year. So hoping for a good success. And beyond that, we've helped communities help out with backhauls of scrap appliances, refrigerant gases, tires, paint, household batteries, things that fit within our budget that, again, folks prioritize removing from their landfills. Eugene's gone. That's too bad. So yeah, this is just one of our projects last year up in Cluck One where we took out like maybe 600 to 800 tires. We lost count after two. Very dirty work, but when a community comes into the program, this is kind of our annual cycle. We start off with the planning, then we get in, make sure everyone's trained, a heavy emphasis on the hazmat regulation training. Folks legally can't ship things like lead acid batteries without that training. Then we'll inventory the items, again, have the communities help out with that, get them the supplies they need to properly package and ship out these items. If it's someone's first time, we try to get a staff person out on site to either do training or work alongside folks. And then a big chunk of it is just managing the shipping and logistics. So we try to leverage our funds if communities already have, shipping funds built in. We'll either do cost sharing or we'll just manage the logistics for them. Try to do what we can to take it off of their plate so they can get this material shipped out effectively and affordably. And there's always ongoing technical assistance. Anyone, they don't even have to be in the program, should feel free to call up Zender and we have staff there to help them with their solid waste questions. In programs grown since 2018, we did our first $500,000 year last year, really hoping to build off of that. But it's steady growth since the pilot phase, but you can also see those target materials like the e-scrap, batteries, lamps, that volume has been going down, which is good. And then that quote unquote other field has been going up. And so we are starting to see that folks are getting a handle on their e-scrap and batteries, and they are looking more and more towards appliances, junk vehicles, some of the nastier items, and also the marine debris and plastics. And it takes a lot of folks to make this program work. Our main funders are federal agencies, BIA, DOT, PHMSA, which is the hazmat folks. That's where a lot of our training funding comes from. EPA and Denali Commission. And then we have some statewide supporters. We have some help from commercial partners that provide free shipping or discount shipping. But really the backbone of the program is these regional partners here. These are other organizations throughout the state that just have a common goal that we work comfortably with, where they're sort of our intermediary between our program and the individual villages. So we lean heavily on these regional partners, and usually there's a couple staff that we call regional coordinators that we'll work closely with throughout the year. And one of those is Queric. Up there in Nome, Queric oversees, I can't remember the amount of tribes, but I believe it works out to 16 communities in the Bering Straits region in Nome. They've been doing a lot of the same things our program's been doing, but before us. So our program's actually modeled off of how they built a backhaul program for their region. My colleague and friend, Vanessa Tobone's there on the left-hand side. She's our regional coordinator there, and she oversees and helps out those 16 communities get out as much stuff as possible. And yeah, just some action shots. I stole one of her slides, but again, they're doing a lot of the same things: training, bringing in materials, packaging, and getting it out. And They do a great job of it. So they're our main partner in this because they have the experience to go out, coordinate with the surrounding communities and tackle the marine debris aspect of things. Our other partner is the Nelson Island Consortium. Kind of, there's people on the screen. Hopefully this isn't flipped around on you. Kind of in the YK Delta area. We'll see a map here in a sec. But we'll be working with them on this marine debris project. They were part of our pilot program with Backhaul Alaska, so we're pretty comfortable working with them. And as a consortium, they have signed agreements where they coordinate and communicate and work well together, the various communities within that consortium. So they're all sort of on the same page with the aligned goals. So it just makes sense to work with these folks. Which brings us to the actual project. Typhoon Merbok, it happened in late 2022. People, like, how relevant was it here? Were people tuned into that typhoon? All right, well, it was crazy. I guess it's because I work with folks out there, but
Hearing about the tragedy up in northern places, but didn't really affect us here, right?
no, it didn't affect us at all here. But yeah, I remember when it was going on, just getting all these emails and then little videos here and there. I mean, it was devastating. And we even used that little FAA app where you can look at the weather station photos throughout the state, and it's just like, holy cow. And you work your way down the coast, and it was awful. And that house floating down the river there, I'm pretty sure that's Nome, but yeah, a lot of damage. It just wiped out a lot of different communities. And there was a good response to that, both on the federal, state, and local level. And it helped cleans up, but there's still a lot of impact, effects of those impacts remain. So how do we tackle that? Luckily, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, they had a good pot of money set aside for hurricane relief or response funds. Our organization put in an application, was awarded $3.5 million over the course of 3 years to, help out, these Merbok affected communities. And like I said, I mean, there's still, the effects are still out there. Some of it is still in town. A lot of it's been swept elsewhere, so it's scattered in the surrounding area, but it's subsistence gear. It's people's remote cabins, fish camps, stuff from within the community, and even just waste, which we'll see here in a sec. So it's a whole litany of material. It's in town, it's out of town, it's all over the place. So the scope of this project, and it's not limited to these 18 communities, but they're the ones that are at least, written into the grant. Are 10 up in the Bering Straits area, and you can see them on the map there. And then we have the 6 in the Nelson Island Consortium, plus Scammon Bay and Hooper Bay, who pretty heavily affected by the hurricane as well. So they're kind of wrapped in with the Nelson Island. Coeric will take care of the Bering Straits, and then us with Sender will coordinate with the Nelson Island Consortium for the remainder. And so, what are we going to do with this stuff? We'll go out, we'll clean it up, but it needs to be removed, and we'll see why here in a sec. So, we are expecting all sorts of different materials, beyond like the buoys and the foam and all that. We're expecting to have some hazardous materials, just trash, everything. So, we'll just skip forward here. So we want this stuff to go away. And why we're not going to be using local landfills is, and it's not to shame anyone, but I really want to emphasize how much more difficult it is managing solid waste out in rural Alaska. There's a variety of reasons. And this is one of our communities that we'll be working with. And you can see here the landfill, which has a very large footprint, isn't even really connected to the town. So here we have a situation where when people do want to dispose of their trash, they have to take it by boat if it's, summer, put it in there, or in winters, I get a little easier. As long as things are nice and frozen, they can haul it out there. And right here, and I'll try to highlight it on the screen if this cursor is showing up for folks. That's the little burn unit right there, the toke unit. So you can see things aren't being managed as they were intended. And like I said, there's just not a lot of people out there. You can't build a tax base to have a full-time operator or build infrastructure. And, if you lose someone, getting someone new in that's trained up is challenging. So there's a lot of the deck is stacked against the folks. So we definitely don't want to put a bigger problem into their landfills. So same place, but you can imagine if you're taking a boat to go dump your trash, like, are you gonna hoof it up over this bank and put your trash near the burn unit? It's like, no, you're just gonna toss it off where it is. So, this is, we're working with this community on a much bigger project, to site a new landfill, and I believe there's some funds to help clean this up. But yeah, it's a challenge, so we don't want to overtax the local landfills. Another community we'll be working with, again, just the landfills, some are already at capacity where an additional load of marine debris would not be a good thing. Another community, and again, you can just see that, like, when things break, it really slows things down. So this burn unit right out here, it's it's missing pieces, so obviously it's not being used, and then again, the trash just kind of stacks up from there. So again, it's a lot harder, limited infrastructure, limited funds, and it's just, you can't keep up with trash because trash is coming in every day. Yeah, and one more, even when folks have kind of their feet under them and have a full-time operator, again, these are class 3 landfills. They're unlined, so if something kind of goes wrong, in this case, someone was burning trash, that fire ended up jumping to some tires, and those tires were right next to a whole bunch of drums, and boom. So again, it's just a higher risk of things going wrong and sometimes devastating. So again, we don't want to burden landfills with more of a problem. And even the landfills that you thought you were done with, it's another one of the communities we'll be working with. Old landfill was closed out, but in this area, there's just, over the last couple decades, a lot of real erosion concerns, and it's gotten to the point where it is eating back at an old landfill, exposing it, and it's being reintroduced into the ocean. So we're actually just talking about this at our staff call this week and saying, hey, can we use our MERBOC funds to do this? And like, do we want to wait a year? Because this is also I think a Brownsfield site. So they're going to be doing these assessments. Is like, should we wait for the assessments to be done, or should they just tackle it now? Decisions being made way above my pay grade, but again, it just shows problems, they don't go away. They can become exposed, and you got to deal with them. So where are we going to put this stuff? We don't have any vendors picked out per se, but and this is really rough breakdown of the different categories. Hopefully we can sort things out more so, but if we want to ship out the actual trashy parts, there's the 3 big dogs: Republic, Waste Management, Waste Connections, all down south. There is a landfill monofill in Nome, but probably don't want to use that. I mean, they more capacity in Nome, but still, you don't want to overburden it with the influx of marine debris, especially if it's a bunch of different communities material coming in all at once. Plastics, still figuring this one out too, but Net Your Problem, she'll be helping out with some of the trainings. Ocean Plastics Recovery has approached us. They're kind of expensive, $1 a pound. But they're really cool. But we'll see. They're out in Kodiak. Alaska Plastics Recovery, which came here to Haynes. the Grizzlywood guy. And then let me know if you heard any more about this, but the Gulf of Alaska Keeper, they got something going on where they want to build a big plastics plant in Anchorage that'll turn everything into concrete. And I saw a presentation on it and I was just even more confused afterwards, but hopefully, maybe someday in the future, you made it sound like if it wasn't for tariffs, it would have been done this last year. So we'll see. And then Ocean Legacy, who I don't know much about, but seems awesome. Anything you can share on them? I think they would be good because they take everything, right? Just about. All right.
Yeah, Northwich, Columbia.
And we've been talking with the Merlin Plastic. So yeah, there's options. We'll figure it out as we get moving. And then metals are a lot easier. There's even an outlet in Nome. But just to give you an idea of like where the stuff will flow, again, moving it down the lower 48 is kind of the preferred option, but shipping wise is also one of the most expensive. So, but I'm sure this map will evolve as the project moves on. So the idea is we have these two big pockets of communities. We want them to ship their material into a common hub where it can be better sorted, and then ultimately shipped out to those end destinations. So Nome makes sense for the Bering Straits region. We're still thinking about how to best approach the Nelson Island Consortium, but luckily we don't have to do any activity there this year, but either Bethel or if there's a different site that makes sense, we'll go through that. But we do want to build capacity through the region. The idea is like, we'll take care of as much as we can with this MRBOC funding, but we want this to continue in the future, or at least have a framework in place where, these typhoons are going to keep happening. And so marine debris will keep occurring, and have something in place where we can learn from this experience so it's easier the next time around. And so for this first year, it's going to be a condensed timeline, but the idea is once fall hits is to kind of get folks trained up, get the planning all done, where as we move into spring, once the snow melts, people can go out in the field, start packaging items, get it to the hub, sorting, and then shipped out. But we really want this to be a community-driven initiative. The idea is to host kind of meetings, get the community involved in identifying the cleanup sites, provide training, and then hire locally for those project periods. So we'll be hopefully get some good locals, get them paid, and have them kind of take ownership in the process of getting the material packaged up and shipped out. And yeah, we're just in the infancy of things. I think we set some dates for our first two sites, which is Safety Sound and then the Galvin White Mountain area. So Safety Sound, pretty big debris field where the waves came in and scattered debris all throughout this greater area. And then similar with Galvin, where, a lot of the debris is from Galvin, but got swept up towards White Mountain. And these are only two sites for this year. So hopefully we'll get things dialed in, learn lots, come up with some good processes where over the next 2 years, we can expand this out to the Nelson Island area, Hooper Bay, Scammon Bay, and then tackle a larger load of communities there in the Bering Straits region. Cool. Well, yeah. If you, for any reason, have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me, and then my counterpart Vanessa up in Nome. There's her contact info, or at least her email. But excited for the project, and fingers crossed that it goes well.
Just a second. But thank you for being here. So Henry, we're a hybrid meeting. So we've got a handful of folks here virtually, and we also have a handful of folks here in the room. So I'm going to introduce Henry. We're really glad that he can come join us today and present. So Henry Reisky is the stewardship coordinator for the Center for Alaskan Coastal Studies based out of Homer. He leads marine debris, environmental monitoring, marine debris cleanups, environmental monitoring, and education programs. So thanks so much for being here, and I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. So, like you just heard, I am Henry with Center for Alaskan Coastal Studies. And as stewardship coordinator, I also run our marine debris program. So I'll be talking about generally what we do with our marine debris program, how we're doing it, as well as a specific project that we got involved with a couple years back based off what we were seeing for marine debris. And just seemed like a really great opportunity for us to try to help out Takshanuk Bay and ideally the state. Let's see. Here we go. So it's not the only thing we're involved with. We get involved in various ways. So like this summer and for the next couple actually, we will be working with Gulf of Alaska Keeper providing volunteers for their cleanup out on Montague Island. We go out and do some of our own remote cleanups, but kind of the core of our marine debris effort here is wrapped up in Coast Walk. So our actual big marine debris season in the bay is in the fall. And Coast Walk is a volunteer-based program that that's been held since 1984. It's changed a little bit, obviously, through the years, but it has also given us the longest record of marine debris in the state because they were gathering data from those early cleanups all the way up until now. The other thing that I really appreciate about the Coast Walk program, we focus on marine debris, but it also takes in environmental conditions as well. So we're taking that opportunity to get people out of the beach, get them cleaning, but while we're there, we want to record what's going on too. And like I said, volunteer based, we have people in the community, and then we also work with a lot of school groups. So the way it works, this here is Takshanuk Bay that you can see. Homer itself is kind of in, if you're able to tell, kind of zones 4 through 12, I would consider Homer. And then there's a few villages, Soldovia, Nanwalek, Port Graham on the other side of the bay, and community sports ahead of the bay. But a lot of it doesn't actually have like a town along these pieces, but it's divided into 32 zones. You can't see the last two there. On the end, divided in 32 zones, people can adopt a zone, they can clean whatever stretch, they can get us back their information. We host community cleanups, so I'll host a few on the Homer side each year, and then through partnerships with state parks and water taxis, we're able to get to some of the remote sites on the other side of the bay too, and clean those up. And then I work with a lot of school groups. Maybe at least 2/3, I'd say, of our participants are involved in a school program that they're going out with. So there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved with us. I mentioned that we're taking lots of data while we're out there. I'll talk specifically a little bit about the marine debris data that we're collecting, but this, minus the debris section, because it just didn't fit on the page right here, is our Coast Walk data sheet. So while people are out there, nobody's required to, but we're also taking information on weather, erosion, what animals are there, how are people using the beaches. It just lets us, because we know we're going to be focused out there, get a snapshot of what's actually going on in the bay besides just what the trash is. And it also gives us a chance maybe to see how these things are interacting in the bay. And then we had a different approach when it first started in 1984, as this wasn't around. But since 2000, we've been using international coastal cleanup data sheets and protocols. It's a really good partnership for us, and we use these data sheets. That's actually the data sheet right now. That's the Alaska specific data sheet that you're looking at. That was only developed a couple years back, and it gives us more flexibility, addresses more things that people see around the state. A lot of input went into this data sheet, but really like it because of the flexibility, right? So I'm working with various groups, right? People can adopt a zone. School kids from any age could be out there, or it could be a community cleanup with, just adults. And the flexibility of this is really great because it's any amount of time, any amount of people, we could all record it in the same way. It's super understandable. So if somebody checks out a zone, they're typically coming and just picking up a packet. They might talk to me for a little while and I can explain things. But generally people are picking it up and they're able to go with it pretty easy. They might not, I might have to do a little more recategorizing when they get back in just because it is a lot of categories, but it's pretty understandable and approachable for people, right? Because the core concept is just, well, what did you find? Try to record what you're finding and then we collect weight as well. Another thing that works really well, and it's true of marine debris in general, but it's definitely true around the state. This is one thing that they try to capture in this Alaska data sheet, is just that everywhere you go, the debris is going to look different. Kachemak Bay does not look like Haines. If we compared numbers, compared item types, they would look different. And so I found it pretty good. It's not going to be perfect for everybody all the time, but I found this data sheet in the collective system matches the debris that we're finding really well. I very much, and obviously you can do this with any system, but it gives us a lot of ability to talk about things or to look at things that could be overwhelmed, right? So if you, like in that first picture, you pick up one car, right? You're talking tons, and that's going to overshadow every food wrapper or bottle that you're finding. So the item count data also really helps. And then it's open data, right? We can keep our own database. We contribute data to them. Anybody can look it up from around the world. We can compare it to other people. So we've just really enjoyed the system. So looking at some of that data, why we do it, how we do some of the things. So first, dividing it into those zones helps us look at what even changes within the bay. So if anybody is familiar with Homer, Zone 4 is on Bishop's Beach. And so that's just a very popular place for people to go out, have pallet fires, things like that. So glass pieces, right? If you look at it, you're like, oh man, that's a big problem in the bay. It's a big problem at Bishop's Beach, really. We're not finding in a lot of other spaces. The same thing could be true for nails, right? Just because pallet fires. And so it lets us see where the issues are in different spots of the bay and how the bay is not the same in each different area. And also the item tracking lets us see how things are changing. So this is just a 5-year span there. But we can see generally big changes in how much is collected, but there was a general downward trend here. And then you'll also notice that these are bottles per person hour, so or styrofoam pieces per person hour. That's because sometimes the data tries to lie at you. Homer has a plastic bag ban. This was around the time that bag ban was going through, so I checked out our data. And initially, it's like, man, there was something going on with plastic bags right away. And then we had a huge jump that came back. But what really happened is we had a big shift in how many volunteers we were getting. So the plastic bags were pretty much consistent straight across the board, but we had a different number of people out there on the beach for a different amount of time. And so it was something that just looked obvious in the beginning, but it was all a trick because it was really just based off participation numbers that we were getting. So having the items, having the weight, having the people hours, all of that lets us get a complete picture of what's going on here, or as complete as we can get. So last year, we like I said, we do this fall. So September and October are our main times, 443 volunteers. A lot of those being school groups, did 21 cleanups, 650 hours, 2,500 pounds. So that's another piece here, right? So if you go out, like if you find a trawl net, or buoys, things like that, they add up really fast. So 2,500 pounds across that many hours. But then when we get into the item count, we're collecting lots and lots and lots of little things here. Actually, I think that might be the next piece. Yeah. So pretty populated area, right? So 5,000 people within city limits, 10,000 around Homer, big tourist area. We do see a good amount of consumer waste. Stuff that's not drifting in from somewhere else. It can't be blamed on currents or anything from being out there. It's our stuff, right? It's the stuff that people in Kachemak Bay are using. Not to say that nothing drifts in, but for the vast majority, what we're finding is from our bay. So we do see consumer waste, things like single-use plastics, food wrappers, cigarette butts, things like that. And then you see actually a major category, nails and construction materials, 28.6%. That's largely from those pallet fires. So I'd always just interest me that one single activity can have a pretty major impact on what our data looks like. It might not be as concerning as some of these other pieces, right? Even though you could step on it, I would not consider a nail as harmful as our next category, which would be foam pieces. That is consistently, as far back as looking at the data, foam pieces is going to be one of the top items in here. Other stuff shifts around, right? Cigarette butts used to be pretty competitive. That's falling off, which is great. Food wrappers also, but foam pieces is consistent. And so we see a lot of single-use items. We have those pallet fires. They actually contributed quite a bit. And then we just have lots and lots and lots of foam. So that led us to start looking at how can we address that specific issue? What can we be doing? So a little backlog. We see lots of foam. It breaks readily into pieces, right? But it's used a lot, and it's used pretty consistently, right? So it's lightweight, it's water resistant, and it's insulative. We could also add in there cheap. So you can see at the top there, billets. So a lot of private docks on the far side of the bay. Not to say that public can. In fact, Jackaloff dock just got its styrofoam removed that was leaking out and going to be replaced, which is awesome news for us in Kachemak Bay. But billets breaking out create lots and lots of these tiny pieces. And then we also see lots of foam from things like coolers, bait packages, things like that. Coolers would be another big one that we're seeing foam pieces from. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference once it breaks into those little tiny pieces, but sometimes you can. Color, size, pieces, thickness. Okay, so that was kind of the good of foam, right? Styrofoam, polystyrene, EPS, those don't all necessarily mean the same thing, but I'm going to use them interchangeably probably throughout this presentation, just because, yeah, it has a lot of characteristics we can use, but it has a huge amount of downside as well, right? Once we're done with this, we can't recycle it. Not that it's like impossible, but it's hugely impractical. Whether in Alaska or even the 48, it's just logistically very, very difficult to recycle. And then it readily breaks into microplastics, right? All these tiny little beads that you can see in the picture here, those would come from even one small piece of styrofoam could break into that many. And on our beaches around here, they look pretty clean oftentimes at face value. And then you flip with a log or a rock or look at the grass line, and you can always find these little pieces of styrofoam. And then that's really difficult to remove. It takes forever. Like I said, kids are some of my biggest volunteer groups. I personally get tired of picking up little tiny styrofoam beads. So it is kind of a big ask for a third grader sometimes. But sometimes they get at it, and it is really important that we pick up these little pieces out there too. They kind of immediately enter the food chain, right? So I've seen ravens, crows cruising the rack line on the beach, eating at these pieces. And then also Kachemak Bay, a large shellfish producer, mussels, oysters, and they're filter feeding. So if there are microplastics in the water, if there are chemicals leaching into the water, those things are going into that as well. So for lots of reasons, we don't want this to be there, but it is helping people make docks, keep things cold. So we want a solution. We want an alternative, because right now there's not a huge amount of alternative for this. And so we ended up partnering with Professor Philippe Omsislavsky. So he's with University of Alaska Anchorage, and he has developed with some partners a mycelium material that is insulative and buoyant. I'll explain a little bit more about this later on, but the core idea is this material can replace styrofoam across various applications. We can see some pictures here, one of just a sheet that was produced, as well as some floats that were produced with the same process, just done in a couple different ways. So, kicking us off, mycelium. That's what this is all about. This mycelium is what makes it possible. So mycelium is essentially the main body of a fungus. When we look at a shelf fungus or a mushroom or anything like that, so we have shelf funguses here in this picture, what we're looking at is the fruiting body, right? So that would be like seeing the berry on a blueberry bush or the flower on a blueberry bush. There's so much more bush going on than the berry and the flower. So that's what the mycelium is, the main body of a fungus. It is what's breaking down, in this case, in the case of the species being used, wood to produce to feed that fungus. It is made of chitin, a naturally very strong material, and it can grow pretty rapidly. So this mycelium is what makes this possible. And then this is the end product. As far as I'll talk a little bit more about the grant later on. There's a lot of ways that this material could be used. Specifically right now, we're focusing on coolers. There are other areas, and I'll talk about them later, but coolers are what we're looking at. So my cooler is the new tag for the product, and it is carbon neutral, compostable, biodegradable. So on that compostable note, you can see actually in the picture there, that was just a piece that was buried in a forest, right? So there was not actually any active composting going on. Sometimes when you hear that word, it means like in a commercial facility, which are not available in Alaska or something like that. No, this stuff thrown into the woods will decompose. It's also insulative. So it has a R value, or it resists heat transfer at the same rate as styrofoam. So 1 inch of this material will give you the same insulative ability as 1 inch of styrofoam. It is also, because of the coating that it makes, naturally water repellent, and because of the characteristics of the mycelium itself, it is antimicrobial. So the main goal was to make a light material that was compostable, the same insulating value as styrofoam. That was achieved. Water repellents is going to be important. We're looking at them for fish boxes. If you're looking at it for buoys or floats or anything like that, also very important. Antimicrobial was a bonus. It was one of the things that they kind of found out in testing when they were looking at it. And here is the general process. Oftentimes when we're presenting, Philippe gets to present this part, so it's great for me to get to explain how it's going on. Essentially, how it works right now is they are taking beetle kill spruce from the forest. That is being pulped into cellulose fibers. Those fibers are then essentially put in a big mixer with a surfactant, which makes bubbles. So think about like shaving cream, right? So there's a surfactant in that, it makes it all bubbly. So you mix up this cellulose fiber, very thinly shredded wood, you mix in a surfactant, you mix in the mycelium, and what happens is the surfactant makes bubbles, the wood fibers kind of stick around those edges of the bubbles, and then the mycelium, as it incubates, right now there's a generally average of 10-day incubation period, they will surround and consume the wood fibers, and that's what's really the core piece. If we just left the wood fibers, as it dries out, as it sits, all those air pockets are going to collapse. But since the chitin in the mycelium gives it structure and actually breaks it into smaller and smaller pieces, it traps the air, and that's what gives it that insulative ability. So the chitin was the real link there, because you could froth up the wood fiber, have it be really full of bubbles for a little while, but you have to have the chitin to catch that and keep it. Cool. Center for Alaskan Coal Studies, we are not actually like a research organization, we're an education organization. And so our part in this too, things that we were doing, so the goals of this grant, this was a NOAA funded grant goal to use the mycelium boxes. So we want to get those out into the actual industry. We want to get them used here in Homer. We're also doing community education, so getting the word out. If we want people to use them, it's good to tell people why and how they're great and all that. And then composting in schools. This is one of the ways that we are testing compostability of this, as well as comparing that to some other, PLA, primary polylactic acid, like the kind of like if you see a clear cup that says it's compostable, polylactic acid. But that's one of those situations where it takes some special special conditions. And we were trying to see if that could be reproduced here in our schools as a way that all of this could be then kept locally and sustainably gotten rid of once it was done. So here it is, composting the schools. We use tumbler composters and vermiculture composting in the schools. That's one of the things that's really actually kind of hard with the schools composting is in Alaska, the summer is when you can compost best because that's when our temperatures are high. Well, there's no school then. So we were trying to test out some other things. How can we make it happen year round? How can we make it happen indoors? So we worked with McNeil Canyon, Homer High, and Nikolaevsk. They all had those systems. And they tested out some of this. They had some success breaking down this material, although we found it was pretty hard for them to keep temperatures, even, active compost in those smaller systems. And we're not able to break down any of the PLA or polylactic acid. And then working in the community, we've been hosting workshops at the Consistent Bay Lab, 3-day workshops where people sign up, they come out, people from all over the state, some people from Homer, some people coming in, they're going out, they're learning about the mushrooms that are there. Philippe comes and teaches identification. We look at this material, consider this material, and then we've also made sheets of this even at the lab, where we were able to mix it up, put it in the tray, come back and make one of these sheets with the people who are on this workshop. And then our partners. So this is kind of the biggest new piece of this is that they have been used now. So we have community partners with the Kachemak Shellfish Growers Co-op, Coal Point Seafood, and then a more recently added partner would be Kodiak Wild Source Salmon. And these three, we have shipped boxes from the Shellfish Growers and Coal Point. We have them there, but they have not shipped yet from Wild Source. We're actually going to hold off a little bit, get some higher temperatures to just, a little bit more rigorous of a test. So in our initial shipments, we wanted to do some real world testing, right? We could see in a lab when we put these boxes together, you test and slid about and you're like, yep, it matches styrofoam. And you can do those, but it really, the test is, can it do the job? And so we wanted to see it do that. So we actually shipped from those people across the country to a few different areas to see how these boxes stood up, to see how they kept temperatures, as well as to see how do they break down? Can they handle the shipment? Is there any leaking? We wanted to prove that they could do the job. So we shipped to a few places. That Wild Source, we're going to ship to the West Coast, but we started with Midwest and East Coast and sent out these shipments. So we've sent 3 frozen seafood shipments, 1 live oyster shipment, using the same standards. So the oysters ship 2-day because that's how they normally ship their oysters. All the shellfish ship next day. I mean, not the shellfish, the frozen seafood, because that's how they do it. So we didn't want any changes. Our boxes are different dimensions than they are using right now because of our limitations on production. But other than that, we wanted to match their standards. And we had pretty good results here, right? So 30.85 hours in travel, 25.5 hours in travel. We'll talk about those two first. That yellow one, you can see, is a little bit different down to Florida. But they both arrived frozen, -2.5 on the data loggers when they arrived. Everything was frozen, nothing melted at all. So they've done it, right? So they've met the demand of what they would need to do for that. On the one that went down to Florida, it spent quite a bit of extra time, right? So that was frozen seafood. Supposed to be next day. It ended up taking 74.5. Looking at the data here, it looks like it might have been held in some storage. Either that or the data logger shift inside, because naturally we shouldn't see the temperature go down there. So the data logger could have shifted, or it could have been put in storage for an amount of time. And then it did arrive above temperature, but it also arrived much, much later than it was supposed to. And across the amount of time it should have traveled in, it would have stayed as well. So good preliminary results from these first shipments. And then we have quite a few next steps. Philippe and his students are working on more testing, more scaling. One of the things I didn't mention, it's actually going on right now up in Fairbanks. this same material could be used as home insulation, right? So a larger sheet of this or combined sheets of this could get put in a wall and be insulated as well. So that testing is also going on right now. They have built a test structure using this as insulation to see how it would work in the environment. Scaling is also a huge next step. So right now, these boxes work. Right now, they're also getting handmade by a grad student. Maybe not the perfect scale for using industry-wide, but we're trying to speed that up, meet scale so that we could make larger boxes, so that we could make boxes faster, so that we could incubate more efficiently. There's all sorts of possibilities for this material, and it's just what directions we're trying to go. But scaling is a big one. They're also got some recent funding to test this with cardboard. Right now, you're collecting down trees, which are a fire hazard, so that is helpful, but they have to be shipped to the 48 to get shredded. There's no processor for that in state. That would be a huge benefit if we didn't have to ship it down and ship it back up. And if we can get rid of a waste stream that's already here, even better. So the next, they're testing with cardboard to see if it can work with shredded cardboard fibers or what percentage you have to mix that with the wood fiber, just to see if we can make this thing even more efficient. Under that same grant, the patent will be applied for. There is a patent currently held for this same technology in Finland, but in the US, that patent will be applied for as part of this. We're going to do some further real world testing. So we're going to do some more shipment. We're going to get it out of Kodiak, as well as more lab testing, just thicknesses and things of that nature. And then we want to make it available to the public. So far, those tests were, it wasn't somebody, being able to walk into Coal Point and be like, I want the mycelium box. But that's the end goal. We want these to be available for people. And we want them to be used. We think that it's a very viable solution to get rid of a styrofoam issue. And so we actually want them to be available here on the spit. Production right now is one of the main issues with that, just being able to produce enough to meet anticipated demand. We wouldn't want to, start and stop. We want to be able to introduce it or roll it out more smoothly. Oh, great. I wasn't sure how much I was on time. I did pretty good. I got like 5 minutes left. So that's me. I'm Henry Reisky, Henry at akcoastalcities.org. That QR, I believe, will take you to our website as well, if you want to find out more. But yeah, if you're interested in this or have an idea or a business who might want to do some testing or you want to see what's going on, let me know. We might be able, send a sample, send a box, down, or just keep you in touch and update you on what's going on. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing here so you'll see me again. I'll figure out what angle I've been at this whole time. Oh, a decent one. I have a weird computer camera. And if any of you have any questions, either on our cleanups, what we got planned, or this mycelium material.
Question on the mycelium, was that going to be comparable? Like you said, styrofoam's real cheap, right? Is this going to be as cheap as styrofoam?
Yeah, it's an issue of scale. So right now it's not, right, because of production. But Philippe actually estimates at scale this would be cheaper than what is being charged for a fish box right now. If you think about your inputs, right?
Okay.
I don't want to get too into how plastic and oil subsidies work, but right, so the inputs to this are a live culture of mycelium and wood fiber, right? So the inputs are extremely cheap, and it actually it's a pretty reasonable conditions that it can grow in. It takes pretty high humidity, but a room at 70 degrees and a little humid, it can grow in that. So yeah, it has the potential to be economically competitive as well. It's just a factor of the scaling. When you're making them by hand, you can't match. Not quite.
One question. Yeah. Have you considered using pulp and sawdust from places that have small, lumber operations, for example, in Southeast?
Yeah, so there's been the issue is fiber length, essentially. And so if you have sawdust and things like that, it can't form kind of the matrix that you need where they're interlocking to get, like paper fiber too, right? The more you cycle it, the shorter fiber length you have, the less stuff you can do with it. So fiber length, so like wood chips might be able to turn in. We've also talked to Alpar, just as like they do Christmas tree collection. Needles might be an issue, but if that's just another way to deal with a waste stream that somebody else is trying to deal with, that we've looked at as well. Right now, it's kind of weird. Like, so the fiber that you're getting back, what you're adding, it almost looks like brown cotton candy. Like it's long, tiny little fiber lengths.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Anyone on Zoom have any questions? No.
Asked them in the chat.
Well, thank you so much, Henry. We're
Yes.
definitely interested in this product, so be in touch about that. But thank you. It's great to hear these innovative ideas.
Yeah, thank you all for having me, and I hope your debris season is kicking off well.
Okay. So our last thing for this evening is to talk about the training for the Chilkat Islands. And so Christina from Ocean Conservancy is going to share that. I guess I don't have to stand for that here anymore.
Being here
But
today,
I
even though I
did
know
want to share.
you all are forced to be here because this training is mandatory. But I appreciate you taking the time to do this and to volunteer to participate in these cleanups. It's been so much fun getting to work with Tracy and the Takshanuk Watershed Council and all of you guys. This is my third year helping out with these cleanups. So just really grateful to be here with you all and grateful for your time. So this is a quick overview of what I will be talking with you guys about today. It probably won't take the full 30 minutes, but we'll just build in time for any questions at the end. And if you've done this training before, it will be very familiar, but I have updated photos. So hopefully there will be a few new things for you this year. So we'll talk a little bit about data collection and why it matters, what Ocean Conservancy does with it. Then we'll do a little practice, kind of mock cleanup, looking through the data card, finding the categories. If you were here for Henry's talk, he showed a picture of the data card. So they use their same data card in Homer, which is pretty cool. So now you guys can compare your data to what they're finding there. It is a lot of categories, but once you get familiar with it, you'll get the hang of it and it's pretty easy to work through. So this is all to prep you guys for these cleanups so that when you're out in the field, it'll be easy to go through the data card and collect the data. So then you'll be able to have it year after year. So quick introduction to myself. My name is Christina, and like Tracy said, I live in Sitka. I've been there for almost 10 years. I moved there in 2015 to spend a year as an AmeriCorps volunteer, and then I ended up staying. So I worked at the Sitka Sound Science Center, a small nonprofit there, for about 7.5 years. And then about 2.5 years ago, moved over to Ocean Conservancy to work on marine debris. And so I have been doing that for the last couple of years. And in this role, I get to work with organizations throughout Alaska and the broader Arctic region to support marine debris removal projects and prevention work. And Ocean Conservancy, for anyone who's not familiar, we are a large, well, relatively large nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. We do a lot of ocean policy and advocacy related work. And so about half of our staff is over there working directly on policy issues. And then we have other staff spread out around the US in different coastal states. We have about 10 to 15 staff here in Alaska. I'm the only one in Sitka, so I work remote, but then we have some people in Juneau, some in Anchorage, and then some kind of spread out in other places as well. And we work on all sorts of issues related to the ocean. And our main goal is working with communities and addressing issues that are important to them. And one of the main issues that we work on is marine debris. And we've been working on marine debris this is our 40th year working on marine debris through a program called the International Coastal Cleanup. So this was started in 1986 by a group of volunteers who were going out and cleaning beaches and started to collect data on what they were finding. And soon it started to spread throughout all the states and then globally. And so there's over 150 countries that participate each year. And to date, over 18 million volunteers have collected over 380 million pounds of garbage. And what makes this program unique is the data that's collected and then the network of volunteers or network of coordinators. And so we have coordinators around the world who are leading these cleanups. So Tracy's your coordinator here in Haines that is, planning, doing all the logistics for the cleanups. And then we bring those coordinators together so that they can connect with each other and learn from each other. And so this morning we actually had a call with our Alaska and Arctic coordinator group. So we had quite a few coordinators from Alaska. We had some from Greenland and Iceland and Norway, and everyone's coming together to share information and strategies with each other. So we're trying to create sort of this platform for connection and communication because it's a global problem and we can learn a lot by sharing strategies with one another. But then the other important piece is the data. So we've been collecting data for over 40 years. And we have paper data cards, which is what you guys are gonna be using during your cleanup. But then we also have an app that people can track data on, and that all feeds into a database. And then every year we produce a global report. So it's the top 10 items found globally. And then we use that data to inform research and policy. And so this is a snapshot of that database. So like Henry mentioned, if you were in his presentation, all of their data feeds into this. All of your data here in Haines also feeds into this, and anyone can go online and access this and download the data. And then you can, look at it year after year, compare it across different states, across different countries, and we manage the data, store it all here for you. And it's really nice because with this standardized format, then we can really compare it across the world. And these are some just kind of general examples of how different communities or states or even countries have utilized the data for policy change. So that's really the goal. We're not just collecting data because we think it's fun. I personally don't love collecting data when I'm out doing a cleanup. I just want to pick up as much garbage as I can. I don't want to have to worry about tallying it. But it is very important because that data can be used to make the changes. And so, yeah, these are some examples. Communities have used them to enact plastic bag bans or, polystyrene bans, single-use plastic bans, all sorts of things like that. And so here is a snapshot of what you guys have collected over the last 2 years. So I think the first year that you guys started collecting data during your cleanups was in 2023. And so that's this is your top 10 item list. And then last year, that's yours. Like Henry was mentioning, it also, there's so many different other variables that impact like your item count, hours cleaned, number of days cleaned, volunteer effort. But this gives an overall snapshot, and I know that Tracy shares this with the local assembly. And so maybe there's something, I'm not going to get into your local politics, but maybe there are local changes that you guys want to make if you're seeing that you're finding a lot of plastic bags or single-use plastics or foam packaging or things like that. What are local changes that you guys can make, or even education opportunities in the community? We seem to find a lot of gun shell cartridges here. So what kinds of just local education, it doesn't even have to be, laws put into place, but can impact people's behavior. So you guys have done an excellent job collecting data over the last 2 years, and we're really grateful that you are willing to continue doing the data collection. So this is the form, and I'm gonna just run through it quickly on the screen, showing you all the different parts of it, and then we'll hand out the data cards. And we'll just kind of pull out items of trash that Tracy brought in, and we'll practice finding them on the data card. But I'll run through it on here first. Also, this is one of the awesome photos from last year's cleanup. So we're gonna just pretend that this is marine debris cleanup at Shoals Point, which is in Sitka. And so on the front side of the data card, we have this just general section that's asking for, you know, your contact information, name, date, number of volunteers working in the group. So usually we recommend working in groups of like 2 to 4, but it really can vary depending on the overall group size. But we find it works best if you have too many people in the group, you get pretty spread out, and then it's hard, your data collectors like having to try to track down everyone in the group. So kind of 2 to 4 is kind of the sweet spot. And so just basic information, you know, is it a shoreline cleanup or an underwater cleanup? And then site name. And so even though we produce that overall top 10 for all your cleanups that you do, since we're collecting individual site information, we could also produce a report for each of the sites year after year. And then at the bottom, this is for post cleanup comments. So sometimes you might find a lot of one brand or, you know, something with a different language writing on it, and you want to make note of that. This is where you would write that. This is also where you might write, I know there was one year where we found a lot of really large items that we couldn't actually haul out. And so mark that location, and then you can write that down here, items not removed. And if you can get the GPS coordinates, that's always really helpful. You can write that in there, or just even kind of describing the item and the general location. Sometimes I've been on cleanups where we've come across a dead or injured animal, and so making note of that as well. And then, you know, of course, calling the appropriate agencies to let them know that you found that. And then on the back side of the data card is where you'll be actually collecting the itemized data. And so this is all just with tallying, and then at the end of the cleanup, adding up the total amount. So the top section is fishing and aquaculture gear, and then also kind of construction items. And so all your, you know, buoys, floats, fishing line, net, rope, things like that, that's going to be in this top category. And then on the right-hand side, that's where the kind of the construction materials are. It definitely seems like we find a lot of, yeah, things like, you know, buckets, barrels and buckets up there, and then like plastic oil cans or, you know, oil bottles, things like that, that would go up in that section. And then on the bottom of the data card is where we have the single-use items, single-use plastics, like plastic bottles, beverage cans, bottle caps, straws, things like that. And then other personal hygiene and other debris. So things like clothing or tobacco products, phones. When we've done an underwater cleanup in the Whittier Harbor, and every year we find like 15 to 20 cell phones and many sunglasses. Yes.
Question. Where would a styrofoam float go, like from a dock?
Foam blocks or dock pieces up
Okay.
there. Yeah.
So you've got foam on here a couple times, but
Yeah.
where- okay.
Yeah. And you know, the thing that I always want to remind people is just do your best with this. This is citizen science data, so it's not, doesn't have to be perfect. It's just like doing your best to fit into the categories that you feel like make the most sense. But there is a little bit of overlap with like foam. We have foam dock pieces, but then also foam packaging and insulation, and that's more like for housing insulation, which I know we found here, like the blue styrofoam, things like that. So to the best that we can, separating it out, because then we also have foam food packaging. So yeah, do your best to match it to what you think it is. When it's in a chunk, sometimes it's hard to tell, but the main point is that it's a piece of foam, and that we're documenting that. And then at the bottom here, this would be where you would put the microplastics, which we always find a lot of, just small pieces less than 2.5 centimeters, and on your data card, this measurement is the actual size. So, you know, you could hold it up there to measure, but again, it does not need to be perfect. If it's slightly over that and you mark it as a microplastic, that is completely fine. And then if there's other items not listed that you want to write in, I think we tend to find a lot of like the milk crates here. And I remember that was something that we started writing in for you guys just because you were consistently finding that a lot. So if there's some item that you want to start tracking, you can write it in on other items not listed. sometimes I get data cards back and there's just like writing all over it because people have like a bunch of extra categories. That's totally fine too. Whatever, you know, you can do to record what you're finding, we will make it work on the back end. And then at the bottom, you know, this is, again, fill it out to the best of your ability. We usually don't get all of this information, but if you have the number of bags that you filled, your individualized weight for your bags. I know that we also get a total weight for all of the debris. If you can be tracking, you know, on your phone or your watch distance cleaned, that's always really helpful too. But again, not required to do those sections. Okay, so we will do a quick, just kind of run through. We'll pass these out and you do not actually have to collect data.
Can I ask another quick
Yes.
question? On microplastic, like if you find an area that, you know, wind, weather, waves, whatever, collects little bits of styrofoam, how do you want it quantified when there's too much to count? I mean, you're gonna get a pile.
Yeah. I usually will just try to like estimate, you know, like how many handfuls of that and how many fit in a handful, or sometimes I'll count out the, you know, if I have
Subsample.
yeah, subsample and then just do your best to guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, yeah, you guys probably got it on the front side. So yeah, just, that's what you would fill out, you know, even on the boat ride out to where you're going. And then on the back is where we're gonna be looking at. So just start to familiarize yourself with the data card. And we'll start pulling things out. So what is this item? A bucket.
Okay.
Yes, you guys all see plastic bucket.
Yep.
Yeah, Tracy, maybe you can point it out.
Right here, yeah, under appliances, yeah.
Barrels and buckets,
Yeah.
perfect, yeah.
So do we estimate the weight?
You don't need to track, yeah, for this, we'll just be doing item. Yeah, some groups will also get weight of each category or of each item, but
Yeah, you just start tallying.
yeah, I'll start tallying, yeah. Plastic bottle, yep,
Super goods.
yes, exactly. So there are two plastic bottle.
Beverage bottles, plastic.
Yes,
Under
sir.
consumer goods.
Yes, yeah, because there's another plastic bottle up here, but that's for like cleaners, you know, cleaning products, or like if you're buying a soap bottle or, you know, oil. Yeah, exactly. That would go up there.
Another question,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's okay.
So I think this is probably gonna come up later, but when you're tallying is a good time to look at the recycling number on the bottle, right? So do we separate things?
Yeah, Sure, let's talk about that real quick. So, we'll collect 1s, 2s, and 5s.
Yes.
Okay, but you have to know that it's a 1, 2, or 5. If you get a piece of a bottle and you're not sure, we're gonna err on the side we don't know. So if you're like certain, you're like, this is definitely a beverage bottle, you're gonna put it into a separate bag that we're gonna give to HFR so they can use for their upcycling project. But only if you know for sure, because we don't want to contaminate a whole batch by putting in PVC or 7s or something that's not part of their project. So you will check to see if there's a number. It's great if there's an actual bottle. And if it's a plastic bottle like this, it's pretty safe, right?
That's number one, and
Yeah.
the other one, like buckets, those are number 5, you can definitely take a piece of bucket like that, we know that those are number 5, we can take those.
And dirty's okay.
2s are fine too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, but if you don't know for sure, you don't have to come like track someone down. I would just put it into your garbage bag. So if you know 1, 2, or 5 and you feel confident, put it into your recycle bag. And then HFR will be meeting us to collect those items. So it's a nice way to keep some of that stuff out of the landfill. We're gonna do our best. And then Molly, are we also gonna collect some net things for you?
Yeah, if you, I mean, in my experience, there hasn't been that much that you
Okay.
find, but I'll certainly take it, and I haven't called Kate yet, but I can meet her there.
Yeah, you take rope
Deal with
too,
my
don't you?
stuff, you deal with your
And you
stuff.
take rope as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do nets and ropes too. Any sort of rope, because we actually find a lot of rope. Like this sort of stuff.
Yep.
You'll take that?
Yeah.
You will take that. Okay, so those things can go into the recycle bag. And we will
But-
be,
You know, if you've got a gigundo coil, maybe not, you know, so quantity wise, size wise, could be an issue. It's hard to know, you know.
Well, we'll sort them out later. Let's just go with ropes and nets, ones, twos, and fives.
Yeah.
Okay.
And quick question for you, Kate, are there recognizable items, especially for number 5, that you could maybe give a list of, like our milk crates? Are those number 5?
Milk crate we could take, yeah.
Okay, so can you like give some notification so people have an idea?
I can't. Fishy, okay. We'll be under- perfect.
Oh, my screen stopped.
Yeah, something glitched and kicked some. Okay. There was a question from Zoom. If you find fishing gear that's labeled with a name, are we gonna try to return it to the owner?
Yeah, we'll do that. And any sort of bait boxes, like the little orange one, we can save those. We can give those, to, the crab fisher folks who use
Even
them.
if it doesn't have a lid, because I find them, but they're.
Yep, even without a lid, it's just fine. Yep, we'll keep them.
Either lids or the bait boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have somebody that will buy them.
We'll, yeah.
I found to identify the float, and I contacted the guy and said, oh, find somebody that can use it.
Okay, what about this?
Strapping.
Yeah, strapping or packing bands, and that is over on the other.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Appliances.
Oh, packing straps.
Yeah, this is
Packing
meant,
strapping
we need to
straps.
update this and have, this is like kind of, this is supposed to be construction category over there. Anyways, yes, under appliances, yep.
Sounds good, I'm fine.
Okay, we'll just do a couple more. Seems like you guys are getting the hang of this.
Consumer goods.
Yes, consumer goods, and there are 2 different bag categories.
Other plastic.
Yep.
And grocery plastic.
Yeah, so other bags, just because, yeah, a lot of places want to specify grocery bags if they want to do some sort of bag ban, so we separate those out. So this would be under other bag.
And we do have a plastic bag ban here, so please do mark them as plastic grocery bags. That's great data for collecting.
Hopefully no one loses a glove, but
Oh, under appliances.
yes.
I think we're
Personal
under
hygiene.
personal
Well,
items.
this is another one that's tricky. We have
Oh.
work gloves
Right.
and then we have PPE gloves, so
Oh,
work
okay.
glove, yep.
So
Are we
is that a work glove or a PC? Or is it
It's a work
personal?
glove.
That's a work.
Yep.
Okay. What about
Again,
personal?
Do your best. Well, so this would be like like the latex gloves, you know, like the
Oh,
single
okay,
use,
the
yeah,
blue,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it seems like, yeah, you guys get the point. The main thing is just looking at it and seeing it is a little confusing at first, and there are kind of multiple items for different categories. So again, just do your best, and we usually recommend having like, you know, 1 data collector per group, just because then you do get the hang of it. But if you feel like rotating, totally fine too. But usually every year there's like some people that really want to do data and they're perfectly happy doing the data the whole time. Yeah.
So that's what happened last year. There was 5 of us and one person was data collector and then she kind of went around and I kept track of what I was collecting. And she came around to me, what did you get? And I gave her a whole stack of stuff. So I didn't put it in the bag. I think I put it in the recycling bag or something. And then I transferred it over into the bag as soon as I gave her the data.
Yeah.
And then she went over to Michael, did something else. She went over to whoever else was with us. So, and that worked great.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. You guys will figure out your own system as a group. So yeah, thank you so much. That is going to be so helpful and really great to have that data. Yes. Any other questions?
I've found a couple of times a piece of styrofoam that was kind of half buried and disintegrating. And the more I tried to pull it out, the more it disintegrated. Is that better just kind of left there?
I mean, I would just say in those situations, kind of use your best judgment. It's likely that with like storms and over time, it's going to erode and end up back in the environment
But it was
anyways.
completely buried kind of at the forest line.
Yeah, it might be, get the pieces that are kind of most exposed and breaking off and maybe leave the rest. Yeah,
Yeah, and 1 year we couldn't even pack it, it was so big.
yeah,
Yeah,
those
just
things get really
buried.
heavy too, because
Just
they're
waterlogged.
waterlogged.
Where that.
Yeah.
We knew where it was the next year, it was still there.
One of these days, with a helicopter.
What are the collecting bags that the individuals in the group will be carrying?
These right here.
Yeah, we reuse the grain bags from the brewery and the distillery. And so that way we're not introducing new plastic. So they're all different colors, so you'll just have to decide like, okay, the white one's my garbage and the yellowish colored one is my recycling. So again, you'll just kind of figure it out as you go, but yeah, we've got all these nice green bags that kind of have a little bit of grain residue in them.
Any other questions?
Any questions from Zoom folks?
I have one. Is there, I know, public isn't gonna be doing Consahine, but at locations like that, sometimes there are kind of large items kind of far from the pickup point. Have you given consideration to things that, maybe a person can't carry to the boat? What do we do?
Oh, I'd mark it. If you have a phone, if you could just give us the GPS points. I mean, we do have some pending grants for more funding to be able to hire things like helicopters or landing crafts. We don't have that funding this year. But if we have those GPS points, we can work on mapping it. And as long as we know where that large debris is, one of these days we're gonna be able to get them. So yeah, if you can just like take a picture with your phone and then send that to me with the GPS points, that would be great. Yeah,
And your contact is on here.
my contact's not on there, but you've all gotten emails from me. I'm easy to find.
Okay, well, before we leave, I'm gonna just show this quick 2-minute long video to get you guys inspired. This was Patty Chambers, who works for Ocean Conservancy, came 2 years ago and took a lot of photos and videos. And so we will see if it works.
YouTube video?
It is, yeah, I can,
We can access that?
yeah, let me see what